Imagine being asked to stand beside your best friend on her wedding day, only to be told you're not welcome unless you hide your skin. This isn't just a story about a wedding, it's about betrayal, pressure, and the quiet cruelty people face when they already feel exposed. When my best friend asked me to be her maid of honor, I was stunned, in the best way possible. We'd known each other for nearly 30 years. We'd seen each other through heartbreaks, family loss, career ups and downs. She had a younger sister she was incredibly close with, so I never expected to be chosen for such a special role. That one moment made me feel valued, seen, loved. But that joy didn't last long. The excitement quickly gave way to confusion and pain when she dropped a condition. I had to wear full body makeup to cover my psoriasis, or I couldn't come to the wedding at all. I froze. The words didn't make sense at first. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. But she was serious. She said it kindly, almost rehearsed, like she'd practiced the wording so it wouldn't sound harsh. But it was harsh. To her, it was about the photos, about looking cohesive. But for me, it was something far deeper. I've lived with psoriasis for most of my life. Some days are easier, others feel like a battle. It's not just about appearance. It's about pain, inflammation, cracked skin, infections. I've spent years trying to manage it without letting it define me. But suddenly, it was being used to define my worthiness to stand beside my best friend. At first, I doubted myself. I wondered if I was being too sensitive. I cried for hours reading online comments, bracing myself for backlash, but what I got instead was compassion, support, people suggesting compromises, people reminding me that I deserve respect, not just as a friend, but as a human being. And it made me stop and think, why did I let myself feel so small? Later that night, her fiancé called me. He was warm, polite, and unaware. He thanked me for accepting the maid of honor role, clearly not knowing I hadn't. He offered to cover makeup costs and expenses for the bridal shower. His words made me feel like I was being prepped for a performance, not included as someone who mattered. So I told him the truth. I hadn't accepted. I explained what his fiancé had told me and how serious my condition is. Not just visually, but physically. He was genuinely shocked. It turns out he had no idea about any of it. I realized then that my friend hadn't been fully honest with him, or maybe even with herself. And that's when things started to unravel. After I spoke to her fiancé, I was left sitting in silence, staring at my phone. The conversation had shaken me, not because of anger, but because of everything that hadn't been said before. And so, she did something unexpected. She began preparing. Not the way she usually did, scrubbing the house spotless, planning meals, stocking up on snacks, but emotionally. She prepared by letting go of the idea that she had to please everyone. Instead, she focused on setting internal boundaries. If they showed up and expected to stay in her home, she would calmly state, "We only have space for 2 bedrooms, one for the baby and one for us. I'd be happy to help you find a hotel nearby." If they criticized her parenting, she would say, "This is what works for our family." And if it got too loud, too stressful, too invasive, she would take the baby for a walk or go into her room and close the door, not to be rude, but to stay sane. That was her power. She couldn't control them, but she could control how she responded. And in that shift, something strange happened. She began to feel stronger, not because anything outside had changed, but because she had changed inside. The day of the visit came. Her mother-in-law arrived, suitcase in hand, smile wide and excited. The kids barreled through the front door, laughing loudly. Her husband helped them inside, his eyes briefly meeting hers. An unspoken, "Are you okay?" passing between them. She nodded, calm, grounded. As expected, the MIL said, "I can't wait to get settled. Where should we put our bags?" This time, she didn't panic. She said gently but firmly, "Actually, we made arrangements at the hotel nearby. It's just a few blocks away. It'll be more comfortable for everyone." The smile faded for a moment, a pause, but then, to her surprise, no explosion came, just a sigh, and then a reluctant, "Okay, I guess that works." It wasn't easy. The visit still had tense moments, comments, eye rolls, passive-aggressive sighs. But it was different now because she was different. And as the 2 weeks ended and the house became quiet again, she sat on the couch with her baby in her arms and whispered, "We did it. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but honestly." And that mattered. Because in the end, boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about bringing yourself closer to your peace, your power, and your truth. And now I ask you, if you were in her shoes, would you have the courage to do the same? My friend had apologized. Sincerely. She cried, admitted her mistake, even told me she couldn't imagine her big day without me by her side. And I believed she meant it. But believing her didn't erase what had already happened. It didn't erase the way I cried the night after she gave me that ultimatum. It didn't erase how I stared at my reflection, wondering why I wasn't presentable enough to be part of a day that was supposed to be about love and acceptance. For a while I blamed myself. Maybe if I'd managed my condition better. Maybe if I'd just agreed to wear the makeup, even though I knew the pain it would cause. Maybe then I wouldn't be in this position. But that's the trap, isn't it? When you're made to feel like a problem, you start finding ways to justify mistreatment. You start asking what you could have done differently, instead of questioning why someone else thought it was okay to ask you to change in the first place. The truth is, psoriasis is part of me. It doesn't define me, but it's shaped how I move through the world. I've learned resilience, patience, and self-compassion through every flare-up, every scar, every rude comment, and yet nothing could have prepared me for hearing that my existence could make someone physically ill. That part, that broke something in me. I kept replaying those words in my mind. How could people who had barely spent time around me hold so much hatred for something so personal, something medical, something completely out of my control? I knew the fiancé was serious about confronting his family, and I hoped he would follow through. But even if he did, even if apologies came pouring in, would it change how I felt? Would I ever be able to walk into that wedding without wondering if people were staring for the wrong reasons? Would I feel like I belonged or like I was just being tolerated? I didn't have answers yet. All I knew was that I felt emotionally bruised, tired, unsteady. Forgiveness might come, rebuilding might happen, but not today. Today I needed space to feel it all. In the days that followed, I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I let myself rest. No pretending to be okay. No forcing positivity. Just time. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to cry, honestly. The emotions came in waves. Anger, sadness, confusion, but also moments of unexpected clarity. I started journaling again, a habit I'd dropped somewhere between work deadlines and doctor's visits. I wrote about the friendship, about the betrayal, about my body, and in those pages, something shifted. For the first time in years, I stopped seeing my psoriasis as a burden. Instead, I started seeing it for what it really was, a part of me that demanded care, not shame. I kept thinking about all the times I tried to make myself smaller, less noticeable, less distracting. I'd laugh off comments, wear long sleeves in the summer, avoid group photos, and for what? To make others comfortable. It hit me how deeply I'd internalized the message that I should hide myself to be accepted, that I was only welcome if I conformed to someone else's standards of beauty and normalcy. That's not friendship, that's performance. So I began talking to people, real conversations. I called my sister, who has always been fiercely protective of me. I told her everything. She cried with me, then reminded me, "You've survived more painful flare-ups than most people could imagine, and now you're going to let some stranger's ignorance take your joy? No way." That was the spark. Next, I reached out to a small support group online, people who also live with chronic skin conditions. Their words felt like a warm hug I didn't know I needed. They'd been there, they got it. The shame, the fatigue, the resilience. One woman shared how she walked down the aisle at her own wedding, visible patches and all, and how it made her feel powerful, not pitiful. That story lit something inside me. I began asking myself, what do I want? Not what's polite, not what's expected. What do I need to feel safe, seen, and respected. And surprisingly, the answer wasn't as complicated as I thought. I needed honesty. I needed agency. And more than anything, I needed to reclaim control over how I showed up in the world. So when my friend texted again, asked if we could meet and talk face to face, I didn't say yes immediately. I told her I'd think about it, not out of pettiness, but because I was finally putting myself first. Maybe we'd repair the friendship, maybe not, but either way, I wouldn't go back to silencing myself just to keep the peace. That version of me, the one who stayed quiet to make others comfortable, wasn't invited to the next chapter. When I finally agreed to meet my friend, we sat across from each other at a quiet cafe. No makeup, no filters, just raw honesty. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. She told me she'd stood up to her future in-laws, told them she wouldn't have a wedding without me in it. They don't get to decide who I love, she said. That moment was powerful, not because it erased the pain, but because it proved that people can grow. She took ownership of her mistake. She didn't make excuses. She said, "I was wrong. I let fear get louder than loyalty." And I believed her. But believing her didn't mean I had to jump right back into planning bridal showers and dress fittings. I told her I needed time. That friendship isn't a light switch, and she understood. As the wedding day approached, I kept checking in with myself, not out of guilt, but to be honest. Do I really want to be there? And you know what? I did. Not because I felt pressured, not because I wanted to prove anything, but because I decided to show up, on my own terms. No body makeup, no covering up. I wore a dress I loved, and I walked into that wedding with my head held high. People noticed, some stared, others smiled. The groom's mother didn't speak to me all night, neither did his sister. And that's okay, because I wasn't there for them. I was there for my friend, the woman who had finally chosen to stand beside me fully. And here's the wildest part. No one's world ended because I showed up with visible psoriasis. No one threw their dinner away. No one left the party. What happened instead? We danced, we laughed, we made memories. And when my friend gave her speech and said, "To the person who has always stood by me, even when I lost sight of who I was, thank you for forgiving me and showing up," I knew I'd made the right choice. This whole journey taught me something important. You don't have to hide your pain to be worthy of love. The right people will make room for your truth. If you've ever felt like hiding a part of yourself to make others more comfortable, just drop a heart in the comments. That's it, a heart. Let's fill the space with love for ourselves and for anyone who's ever felt unseen.